Hey guys. Yeah, I could have sworn that I was in the COVID clear. I tested or I had, excuse me, I had like all the symptoms last week, as I was telling you guys, or 2 weeks ago, sorry, and kept testing negative. And then Friday afternoon, I was like, I can't really smell anything. And so I tested and had it. So I don't know if I have had it. Who knows? It's all so ridiculous. I don't know what's going on. No one does. So anyway, ideally, I think I'll be back with you hopefully Wednesday, at least by Thursday, I think. Um, but if I'm wrong with that, I mean, we'll make it. We'll figure it out either way. So anyway, what I want to do today is show you guys kind of like a 15-minute video of some things we should be taking away from these first four chapters of The Princess and the Goblin. Really beautiful book, and I think there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to do my best to do that. After you watch the video, I'm going to have you guys take some notes as we go through. So just have your book with you, have a pen or a pencil, something you can write with, because I'll have you guys write some stuff down as we go through this. Um, and then on Canvas, after you watch this video, there will be like a quick, uh, 5 question video check sort of thing, just to make sure that mentally you're taking in the stuff that uh, I would be able to see a little bit more that you were actually getting if I were in class. So you'll take that after this video and then use the rest of the class time to read. So what I want to do today is really just look at two things, and that is, who is this grandmother figure? What do we know about her? And then look at how Irene came to find her, because it's a weird story. Um, and so I want y'all to flip to page 18 in your book. Um, it's the very last page of chapter 3, right? So there's a blank space here. And what I want you guys to do is I want you just to write what I have written up here, right? The grandmother, what do we know? All right, so what I want to start with is just okay, let's nail down the stuff that we know about this grandmother figure. Um, just a quick recap, right? Irene is, it's a rainy day. They don't let her outside, right? As we found out in chapter 1 because of the goblins. And so she's just kind of hanging, doing her own thing, and then discovers this stairwell, right? That keeps leading up, and it's very odd. Like it's clearly not a normal staircase. Um, and it keeps going up even when there's not more stories. And then there's rows of doors along the side, and each door leads to nowhere, and she can't find her way back down, but she keeps finding her way up. It's obviously not realistic. This is something mystical or spiritual is happening right now. Um, that's not just a girl walking into the attic. It's something more than that. And then she meets this grandmother figure, and so hopefully you guys have this header written down. But I want us to go ahead and write down what do we know about the grandmother and kind of break her down, and then I'm going to posit what I think she is supposed to represent. Um, so the first thing we know is that she's extremely old, but at the same time ageless, right? And it's this weird. Ooh, there's a pen. I wonder if I can write with that. Yeah, nice. Right, old but ageless. There's this weird thing going on where she is obviously old. It's very clear that she's old. And it says it right at the beginning, page 11. You could not have helped seeing she must be old, right? Irene enters in, she's at her spinning wheel, right? And we don't know what she's spinning. It's kind of hinted at it, but we don't know. Um, and Irene asks her a couple pages later, she's like, "Are you 50?" And the lady says, "Yes, I'm more than that." And Irene goes, "Are you 100?" You can picture this little 8-year-old girl trying to wrap her mind around how old this lady is. And the grandmother goes, "Yes, more than that. I am too old for you to guess." Right? She's ancient. Apparently, she's older than 100, much older than 100. So she's ancient, and yet at the same time, the way it describes her was that her hair was combed back from her forehead, and face and hung loose far down and all over her back. That is not much like an old lady, is it? So she has this long hair. It says her skin was smooth and white. She was extremely beautiful. She stood tall. So like she's almost this like ageless being, and yet we know that she's old. Doesn't make sense, right? Also, just like the staircase doesn't make sense. Like we know she's not just an old lady they put upstairs in the attic, as weird as that sounds, right? We know it's something more than that, even if we are not quite able to tell what that is. So, what else do we know about the grandmother? Um, we know that to a certain degree, how do I clear this? There we go, mouse. Uh, There we go. To a certain degree, like the grandmother's expecting Irene, right? The princess. Like she knows that she is coming. It's not a surprise to her that she's going to show up. Um, and the way that we know that is she says it on page 12. If you guys want to flip to page 12, um, the top two lines, she says, come in, my dear. I am glad to see you. Right? You don't say, I am glad to see you unless you're expecting somebody to show up. Uh, so like, it's not like she's like, oh, little girl, who are you? Like, she clearly knows who Irene is, and she's even expecting her. She's like, I'm glad to see you. And then a little later bit on in that page, Irene is telling her about how she was crying, and the grandmother, it's like 4 lines from the bottom of page 12, says, then why didn't you come to me to wipe them for you? Which again is kind of another weird thing to say. Like she's like, why didn't you just come see me? Like I've been expecting you, so why is it taking you this long to come find me? Um, so the way that she says, like, come in, my dear, I'm glad to see you. The way that she says, why didn't you come to me? It's very clear that in some sense this grandmother figure has been expecting the princess. So we know that she's old, extremely old, over 100, far over 100. We know that she's ageless at the same time. So a different idea of time. We know that she's expecting Princess Irene. What else do we know? We know that in some way she is intimately connected to the princess, right? How do we know that? Most obviously is that they share a name, right? She's like, hey, my name's Irene. And the grandmother says, oh, my name's Irene. And the princess is like, what? But that's my name. And the grandmother says, like, yeah, because I gave it to you, right? Like, we share this thing. Um, so it's there's obviously this connection. These two kind of tie together that she's expecting her and that they're intimately connected. Pretty clearly ties together that somehow, or excuse me, they're expecting her and that they share a name. Like it somehow is pretty obvious that they're connected, right? In some way, there's this intimate connection between the two. Maybe it's family. Maybe she really is a grandmother, but that wouldn't make sense since she's ageless. Because a real grandmother would die by this point. Great 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 grandmother or whatever she is would be dead. So there's something weird going on, but she's intimately connected to the princess as well as expecting her. A couple more things. She's consistently inviting Irene, and I really want y'all to notice this. Right, this will come up again and again and again as we go throughout the book. But the grandmother never once asks like, "Who are you?" or "Why are you knocking at my door?" or "How did you find me?" Right? She says one thing again and again and again, and that thing is come in. Right? She says it 3 times in this chapter, on page 12. Come in, my dear. Come in. I am glad to see you. Then she hesitantly steps inside, right? Then a little bit later, the grandmother says it again. Come to me, my dear. Right? This consistent invitation of open arms, right? Uh, she's expecting her, she's welcoming her, she's inviting her in, right? Come in, come in, come into me, my dear. Right? There's some sort of invitation. And the last thing we know, actually, I think there's two more. We know she's self-sufficient, right? No one's like bringing this lady food, right? She survives off her pigeons' eggs. Again, realistically, that doesn't make sense. Just like the fact that she's old and ageless, just like the fact that they share a name when they've never met, right? Princess Irene's never met the grandmother. Um, just like the fact that she lives in like this endless weird staircase thing. Um, like there's obviously an intimate connection there. Uh, and no one's like bringing this lady food. No one's, like she's on her own and she's taking care of herself. She doesn't need anybody, right? So she's completely self sufficient. We know that from the text, right? These are all things we know from the text. And then the last thing is that we know she's good, right? And a couple people, even that I talked to, they're like, maybe she's a goblin or maybe she's like some kind of creepy, I don't know. Uh, I don't think that's true. And here's why. I want you guys to look on page 14. Well, first off, as you flip there, nothing that she has said seems threatening in any way. And Princess Irene's kind of confused. She's like, she doesn't really understand who she is, as none of us would with all these odd things. Um, but at the bottom of page 14, or kind of in the middle, the grandmother says this. She says, I will explain it all to you when you are older, the lady went on. But you will be able to understand this much now. I came here to take care of you. It's a beautiful line. But you will be able to understand this much now, right? You're 8 years old. There's a lot you don't understand about why this old but ageless lady is living up in the attic, watching over you and expecting you. It's weird. You don't understand that now, but you will be able to understand this. I came here to take care of you, right? So she's good. She's somehow a protector, a caretaker. And so I want us to look at this list, and this is the last thing I want you guys to write down on this page once you have this list written out. It's pretty clear at this point you should be beginning to put it together. Uh, I'm obviously, having read the book, having read a lot of George MacDonald, kind of know what he's trying to get across. But even here, you should be beginning to piece together that this is some sort of divine figure, right? Is it God? Maybe, right? Is it a guardian angel? Maybe, right? It's not very clear at this point, like which one of those two things it is, but it's pretty clear that this is some kind of divine being, right? And each of these criteria fits with it. Old but ageless. Is God old? Of course, he's outside of time, which means he's ageless. Is God expecting us? Right? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Right? I've been waiting for you. I can picture God saying that. Hey, Luke Harvey, I've been waiting for you, man. So glad you finally decided to show up. It makes me want to tear up thinking about it, right? Um, Caitlin Gross, I've been waiting for you, right? Boo Carter, I've been waiting for you. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Right? All the things the grandmother says, exactly what, divine God would say. Intimately connected to Princess Irene, of course, right? I thought of in scripture where, God says, I have called you by name, you are mine, right? John Womack, you are mine, I know you by name, right? Um, Emily Pascal, like, I know you by name. Tori Benson, I know you by name. Um, James Cole Chandler, all of them, right? God intimately connected to us. How beautiful is that, right? How beautiful is that? Inviting Irene, right? The grandmother's inviting her in, just like God's just sitting at the door saying, come in, come in, come in. Just step through the freaking door. Come on, right? Self sufficient, of course, right? The grandmother doesn't need anybody, right? She is whole, right? Just like God, she's whole and she's good, just like God, she's good, right? And so I think it's pretty clear that this is some kind of divine being, right? Again, you could posit maybe this is a guardian angel, right? Maybe this is like a messenger of God, or this is God Himself, herself, right? Being embodied as this grandmother. But I just want you guys to keep thinking about that, right? This being who's looking after Irene even when she does not know it. So now I want us to look at one other thing. What was it that brought Irene to the grandmother, right? And I want us to go back. I like this keyhole picture because it all started with a door. Um, to this definition of the Sehnsucht, right? The indefinable longing for more. And I told you guys to annotate for curiosity and longing and Sehnsucht within Irene, um, because it's this longing that brings her to the grandmother, right? Just like I believe that it's this longing within us that's actually, if we follow it, it will lead us straight to the divine. It will lead us straight to God Himself. And I wanted to show you guys 4 quotes, right? You don't need to write these down, but if you want to annotate them, you can. Just talking about Irene when she's sitting playing with her toys in the house. It says she got very tired, so tired that even her toys could no longer amuse her. Right? Like she's restless, just like I am, just like we all are. We're restless. It makes me think of Ecclesiastes. The guy had everything. He had all the toys, right? And it talks about in this book. It talks about how like they were incredible, like the toys that anyone would want, and they're still not doing it for her, right? So there's this dissatisfaction, this longing for more. Same page. Her head was hanging down, and she was very miserable, as she would say herself, not even knowing what she would like. Right? It's that hunger when you don't know what you're hungry for. She's longing for something, but she doesn't know what it is because it's an indefinable longing. She can't say it yet, but she knows it's there. So what does she do? Well, she sees a stair and she follows the curiosity. It says, frightened as she was, however, she could not help wishing to see where yet further the stair could lead. Right? She follows the longing. She knows she wants something more than her toys. She knows that she's not content with her life as it is. There's a keyhole within her that she feels like needs to be unlocked. And so she follows that longing even through fear. And then later it says the same thing. Her curiosity was stronger than her fear. Right? So she just continues to follow this longing all the way through. All right, last thing I want you guys to write down, and this ties in with this, maybe on the back. So if you go to the very back of the book, there's a blank page. And I want you guys to write a theme list. So if you flip to that very back page, I want you to write, just themes at the top, like we've done in past books. But and here's this first theme, and I think it's really beautiful. When Irene follows that longing that she has, right? This Sehnsucht. When she follows her curiosity, when she follows that dissatisfaction within her, she finds the grandmother, but she only finds the grandmother once she has lost herself. And so what I want you guys to write down, and we'll unpack this later, so don't freak out if you don't fully understand it. But you will be found, but only when you have lost yourself. Right? And in the book, I hope you notice that both times that she had felt like she was completely lost, that was when she was found. Right? So it was when she had fallen down and like broken into tears because she couldn't get back down from the stairwell. Then she hears the spinning wheel and finds the stair. Right? It's only when she's beginning to freak out and has lost everything, and she literally says, I'm lost, I'm lost, that then she is found. And there's something there. I'm not going to go any further than that. But there's something there about like, you will be found, but only when you've lost yourself. And we need to unpack that, especially if this grandmother represents a God figure. All right, what to annotate for? You guys are about to do 2 things. You're going to write down these annotation things to be looking for. Then you are going to watch the video quiz, or the quiz about this video. Should be easy. Y'all should knock it out if you've been paying attention. And then you use the rest of the time to read. So if you want to flip to page 24, that's like right before chapter 5, which is where we're at. And here are the things to annotate for. Anything about being lost and being found. Okay, so we're about to see more of the same thing playing out. Again, don't worry if you don't fully understand that yet. We'll unpack that Wednesday and Thursday. Um, but anytime you see the princess or the nurse, right, Ludi, the one who didn't believe her, which was kind of like Allegory of the Cave in a lot of ways, when she came down and told her about the grandmother. But we're gonna meet a new character, Curdy. He's this little miner boy, um, and he's gonna come into play in the story. And as we go through these next 5 chapters, anything you see about Irene being lost or Curdy being lost, about being found, anything about that, annotate for that, right? Annotate, annotate, annotate. Maybe in the margins just write lost and then found when you see her being found or him being found, right? Anything about that. Um, Continue to look for the nature of darkness. In these next chapters, we'll talk more about the goblins. We'll get a better idea of who they are. Make sure you're looking for that as we did in chapter 1. Um, Look for things about not being believed. So if you remember in chapter 4, Irene comes back down and tells the nurse, "Hey, I met my grandmother. It's pretty crazy." And the nurse is like, "Yeah, you're insane." Right? And it's very similar to Allegory of the Cave, the prisoner who's gotten this glimpse of something greater, not being believed when he comes back and shares. I want y'all to be looking for that same sort of thing in these next chapters as well. And then anything about self doubt. This one's interesting to me because Irene clearly talked to the grandmother, but you're going to notice that she's going to begin to doubt herself. Was I crazy? Like, did I dream that? Maybe I dreamed that. Maybe that didn't actually happen, right? Look for that. Annotate for that because we're going to be talking about it next class. And then I want to leave you with this question. If the grandmother is a divine figure, right, which I think is actually, I know that's what McDonald is doing. If the grandmother is a figure of God, a figure of some kind of divine being, why doesn't she reveal herself every time Irene looks for her? Right? So in these next chapters, Irene's going to try and find her again and not be able to find her. If this grandmother is an all loving God, right? If she's supposed to be an image of this all loving God, why doesn't she show herself every time that Irene looks for her? Right? Why wouldn't she show herself to everybody? Why doesn't she show herself to Ludi, the nurse? Right? Why not? If she's a good God or a figure of a good God, why not reveal herself every time so that there is no self doubt? Right? And that's obviously a spiritual question that we wrestle with ourselves. But I just want you guys to be looking for that and annotating for that as well. All right. So go watch that video, read chapters 5 through 10, and I will hopefully see you guys Wednesday. If not Wednesday, ideally Thursday. And if something crazy happens in us later, then we'll make it work. So much love for you all. Get some good stuff done. Adios.